Hey! All right, so we're going to continue our talk on how to love ourselves. I wanted to make sure and cover this topic. It's probably one of the more important ones. As I said, this is a multifaceted answer, and a lot of times, we forget that it's an important part of the equation. So, knowing what you want. That's so important. So the reason why that is, and the reason why the focus isn't initially outside of you and needs to be inside of you, is because you need to know what you want. It's probably one of the most important parts and aspects of self-love. And I want to tell you that self-love actually affects your bottom line. It affects your wallet. It affects your relationships. It affects your career success. It affects everything. All right. So if that's the case, then your emphasis needs to be on yourself and knowing what you want. So I want to give you this analogy just to kind of give in mind kind of what's happening with or without your permission and why it's so important to know what you want, right? I'll give you this great analogy. So think of it like this. Imagine for a minute that you're going to go on this new health kick and you've decided to maybe cut back on meats, maybe be vegan or vegetarian or something like that. Or let's say you're going to go keto or, whatever. But so now you're primarily on some type of protein. You're probably not vegetarian, right? Okay. And imagine that you've kind of have this idea in mind, all right? And every time you go to a restaurant, rather than choosing what you want specifically, your preferences, your dietary whatevers, instead of choosing that, how about the restaurant brings you everything on the menu? So if you're on a keto diet, they're going to bring you every pasta dish in addition to everything else. Or if you're vegetarian, they bring you every type of seafood, every type of meat, everything other than vegetarian on the menu as well. The universe is doing this at all times. Everything exists, okay? Everything is out there. It's almost like sex, okay? You gotta be able to direct traffic a little bit in order to customize the experience to our liking, right? So we have to know what we want. It's a very important part of the equation. So I'll give you a few examples of people that are like this. And this isn't just for specific people, okay? If you have a relationship, whether you have a relationship, some specific person in mind, or whether you have no idea, you just have certain qualities, you need to write them down. You need to gather your thoughts and you need to make this very specific list, okay? It's very important that you have an idea, okay? So that you can direct the traffic, so that you remember that the only other option is being at that restaurant that serves you everything on the menu every time you arrive. Okay? It's all there, right? But wouldn't you have a much better experience if you had chosen it with the type of specificity that you do at, say, like Starbucks, when you want your vanilla caramel 110 degree non-foam venti extra caramel macadam books. You get where I'm going? The vertical hypotenuse. You're very specific about what you want. If you're that specific about your coffee, about your orders, you need to be very specific about what you want when it comes to self-love. It's an important part of the equation. Why? Because you're just as responsible for teaching others how to love you as you are trying to be the one who is managing everything coming to you at once. If you if you can think of it in this way, It's always coming to you regardless. You're this source that's going to be attracting these things regardless. But you're either directing the traffic, you're either telling them exactly what you want. You're very, very specific. And I can tell you this as an example, right? So I have a very good friend. He's a gentleman. I won't give you the specifics of his life because I feel like he's more like a bro to me. And we had an exchange and we were just kind of talking about our lives and where we were. And it just, it was kind of one of those moments. But he shared a success story with me. And I won't get to the specifics, but basically he was kind of in between relationships and he decided to make this very, very specific list. And then he followed the chain of events that went along with it. And lo and behold, I'll skip to all of that other good stuff that happened in between, but what I will tell you is this: he is dating the woman that he wrote down on that list. Word for word, word for word. Then you have others like my friend Anna, whom I met in Barbados. Well, she was the #1 proponent of love yourself first, and she is a self, she's kind of like a quiet time bomb, you could say. You don't think that she's as powerful as she is, and then you realize that she's a lot more powerful than you give her credit for. Yeah? Okay. So she is the self-loving queen. Well, she made out her list. She is currently dating a guy who treats her exactly as what she wrote out on her list. Exactly. Now I have another client. She was the greatest because she came to me in a moment where she was in transition as well. She was debating whether she should leave her relationship because on paper this guy looks great and most women would consider themselves lucky to have this kind of catch. You'd have to be silly to want to leave this kind of guy, but he wasn't doing certain things for her. After examining herself and really deciding types of things that she wanted, he wasn't meeting that criteria. Okay? But again, remember what I said, the analogy. The universe is going to bring you everything, and if you're not directing that traffic, you may end up with dishes that you don't like. Yeah? Okay. So, in this particular case, I said, listen, I'll leave out her name. I said, but the universe doesn't do voids. Write your list, be very, very specific about what you want, and let's see what happens. She is currently engaged. The size of the rock on her finger is confirmation. On her list, she wrote that she would be married before New Year's, and she was. Okay? Direct traffic. You are going to be attracting things anyway, but think of the universe that way. The universe is bringing you everything. Which experience do you prefer? You're going to have either one. The unconscious one, which is the equivalent of walking into the restaurant and the restaurant gives you everything on the menu, regardless of your dietary restrictions, regardless if you're allergic, they just bring you everything on the menu. Okay? Or are you going to be the one who writes down their order and who is as specific as they would be at, say, a Starbucks or whatever, whatever that case, whatever that is, okay? Are you that specific? You have to know how to direct this, okay? And it's an important part of self-love because even though it appears you're in a relationship with someone else, you are actually in a relationship with yourself, but you are still responsible for directing the traffic, for telling someone what you want, for knowing how to meet your criteria. And regardless of whether you have a person in mind or not, you have to have these qualities because remember what's happening, okay? Your other narratives are going to play with or without you. Awareness of them, they're still going to be playing. So if you're not aware of the fact that you know what you want and can direct traffic and can get away from these narratives, then you're going to feel as if you're stuck in situations that you would like to be out of. Okay? To avoid this, it is important to turn the focus back on yourselves, to really know what you want. It helps in every department, okay? One of the richest gentlemen in the world, he lives in a castle in Scotland. He says this all of the time. He basically says for success in life, even his meetings, he's writing down how he wants the meeting to go. Keyword, he writes them down, okay? And then when he shows up to the meeting, it happens according to his script. He's he's not the richest, but he's one of the wealthiest men on this planet. Saying this is how he made his money. Okay? Lives in a castle. Okay? This guy. You don't have to be that rich. Everything you want, it doesn't matter what you want. There's nobody's judging what you want. But again, knowing what you want is an important part of the factor. Okay? And so, in relationships, you have to allow yourself the time and the space to really focus on what that is in order to avoid flare-ups, fights, arguments, all of these other narratives, all of the other things on the menu that you don't want. Okay? If you don't have someone in mind, it is so good because it's even easier because you're less resistant. The narratives don't exist yet, and you're creating one so that you can enter the experience. It's important. I have another friend, she's a sports psychologist, and she's really, really cool, and she's also a really strong creator and manifester, and she does the exact same thing. She writes down the wins before the game starts, and the game goes according to plan. They have a plan, okay? You have to know the direction. For example, I would go to, like, I've gone to some coaching and self-help, and sometimes I would grab my best friend along, and I would drag him with me, and I'd be like, come on, let's go learn something new. Let's go be in the presence of these people, okay? And he was there with me, and I'm like, are you taking this all in? It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And he'd look at me, and he'd be like, Sin, this is everything you teach all the time. You should be up there teaching this. What are you doing here? Funny, but it gave me a clue. It gave me a clue, a huge clue. Because you see, in these places, in these seminars, what they were doing is teaching these principles and using the same exact books that I had been putting into my mind, consciously choosing to learn, consciously choosing to change my mindset and everything. And what was on display was those narratives. Those new narratives made these people that in my reality possible. You are always doing this with or without your consent, so you might as well start directing the traffic in the same way that you want to direct that orgasm, in the same way that you want to direct that cup of coffee, give your very specific order or your dinner order. Be aware of what you want. A lot of times, for example, here's a funny thing. Let's say people want to manifest money, okay? And they envision one scene. I don't know, however they can imagine their money coming to them. They limit it to one scene. Have you ever considered the ramifications of what it would mean to have a ton of money? Have you figured out how to manage it? Have you learned the skills that it takes to have the things that you want? How aware are you of the language? How specific and clear are you of the things that you want? These are key components regardless. It's a component. Remember, if you love yourself fully, the universe opens up because you realize you're the constant. This is biblical. However, this is going to happen from loving yourself. So in this process, it's important to know what you want. Turn that focus inward. Direct it. Hi, Anna. I was just talking about you. I was literally just talking about her, okay? She totally made the list, and she's living it now. It's all I can tell you. Be very clear and be very specific. It's not the only part. Like I said, this is a multifaceted answer, but it is a huge component. Take that list, be clear, and be part of those success stories, like that gentleman who's dating an incredible woman, or the young lady with the huge rock on her finger who got married by New Year's. Exactly as she wrote down. You guys, it's law. You guys have been given the power of your word. Direct it. Okay? A lot of times we don't know what we want. We don't know how to handle the things that we want. We have to deal with all the things. Usually when something hasn't occurred, like say for example, you want something very specific and you can manifest anything else except this one thing seems to be like the one stumbling block and you're so frustrated. Well, here's the thing. Stop working out there in the sense that you are looking at what's missing. Instead, start focusing on your desires and start thinking about in terms of what's missing instead of treating it like a bad thing. Make it so that becomes your inner narrative. That's why you're standing there as the gatekeeper, so that you can enter a different state of awareness, right? You're locking out what you don't feel, is right. Your inner state is going to determine what you want and what you don't want. You have to be able to direct that traffic. It's an important part of the equation. It just is what it is. You got to know what you want. And that's not easy. Okay, and I will say this, okay, if you've never had an experience, it is very, very difficult to imagine something real, to really relate to the experiences in order to direct that traffic, and I totally get that, okay? In those cases, I want you to be aware that everything is you, and if they're appearing out there, it's because that is the potential. And if you identify with it, if you start directing those inner narratives, rather than focusing on what you don't have, you can have what you do want. But it takes discipline. It takes a real strong discipline, and when you don't have the experience, I can relate to this. It's kind of hard to say I want this, and this, you know, and be clear, okay? But spend time doing that. It's the first part of the equation, you could say. Spend time doing that. Whether you have someone in mind or not, okay? It's easier, admittedly so, if you don't have a narrative in place, okay? That is much easier. If you don't, by that I mean a person in mind, okay? And then you can make your list whatever you want, okay? If you have a person in mind, the narrative is still important, because you have to understand your inner conversations are what's playing outside. And so it is within you, not out there. And so in knowing what we want, we can see the contrast, we can see what we can select. But remember to treat the universe like the restaurant. And if you're not aware of the fact that you direct this traffic, that you give very specific orders, that you should direct and know what you want, the restaurant will always bring you everything on the menu. That's just how it is. That's how the universe works. You know, you're everything, whether you're aware of it or not. So it's like that, you know, that song, when I move, you move, right? Just like that. Okay, that's how the universe is working, whether you're aware of it or not. But that power, okay, and that awareness comes from knowing where you're at inside, being very clear, having a directed focus. Then you can direct this self-love in all sorts of things. And I'll tell you what else it does, okay? You stop focusing on, oh, I need my person, or oh, I miss my person, or oh, whatever. And you start doing what you're supposed to do, which is prepare yourself for the most amazing relationship that you're ever supposed to have, ever in your life, because you've done the work now. You've written down very specifically what you want, and now you're expecting to receive it. Yeah? Okay? And for those of you who have never had the experiences, study the people that are appearing in your world. Okay? It'll help you gather understanding. And remember that one of the most important things in manifestation is it's got to feel natural and real to you, okay? Otherwise, it's going to take longer to manifest. So if you're taking time to study what a good relationship would look like, don't look at something with envy. Look at something with open eyes to see what you have to become in order to have what you want. It is a directed focus. I hope that helps, all right? So I will do self-love, how to love yourself part 5 soon, okay? But I do want to keep these short and brief. It's just a series I'm going to do. I'm going to keep answering this question. If you follow these steps, you will notice a decided change. It is law, but the focus does have to come back on you and not out there. That's just the way it is, right? You are the light, the shadow does what you do. If your focus is outside and not on you, then the reflection will do the exact same thing, whether you like it or not. All right? You have this power. Yeah? All right, you guys. Keeping it brief, I'll do part 5 soon. Please, I hope that you take some time to pay attention to these and actually apply it, because you will find that if you do, your partner will come around, will start asking questions, will want to be with you, or will meet you by some serendipitous chance, but you will know that it's your list. You'll know that it's your list. You will totally know, okay? Direct that traffic. Get as clear as you can be, okay? Otherwise, don't forget, the universe is going to bring you everything like the restaurant would, everything on the menu, which would not be as pleasant of an experience. Okay? All right. Love you guys.